everybody. Welcome to our second webinar that we have launched this year. We're excited to bring this webinar opportunity for our mentors. We will continue to do webinars moving forward to the next school year in addition to our live workshops. But thank you all for attending. Today's webinar is the stages of a mentoring relationship and overcoming relationship pitfalls. Before we begin going into the actual presentation, just a couple of tips on how we can participate in today's presentation. As I go through each stage of the life cycle, I will open up the conversation for questions, comments. I encourage you to share your own experiences, and you can do so by typing in your comments in the chat box. However, if you have questions or anything that you would like to address in the middle of my presentation, that's absolutely fine, and feel free to also type in the chat box at any time that you feel that you would like to, and I will share your question or comments with the audience for a conversation. Okay, so as we begin, I apologize, this is my first time doing one of these webinars, so I'm still trying to figure this out as we go along. So the stages of a mentoring relationship. The reason why I thought this would be a timely topic for us to discuss today is because as we approach the end of the school year, many mentors are in a reflective mode. Maybe reflecting upon your mentoring in general, how your relationship has gone over the past year. So I thought this would be a good time to discuss this. So what are the stages of the mentoring match life cycle? There's the beginning, the building, the testing, and the transition. For the purposes of today's discussion, we will be talking only about the first three stages. So the beginning, the building, and the testing. Transition really addresses the closure of the relationship. And while I cannot reiterate enough how critical this is to have a proper closure to your mentee-mentor relationship, the purpose of this presentation is to help us to evolve, to understand the stages of our relationships so we can continue to provide the support that the students need. I will address transition at another webinar. Also, I will likely be repeating this topic as a live workshop with a little bit more in-depth and including some social workers and psychologists to add into a more interactive workshop live in the fall. But for today's purposes, we are going to talk about the beginning, the building, and the testing. So before we begin, just to get an idea of where all of our participants are in their current match, we are going to launch a quick poll for you to participate, asking you how long you have been engaged in your current match. So to be clear, we're not asking how long you've been a mentor. However, what we are asking is how long you have been engaged in your current match. So we're going to launch that poll now. Okay, great. So it looks like, based on our poll, that 100% of you have been mentoring in your current match for 2 to 5 years. So you are all likely in your beginning testing portion. Some of you, I know the participants have even have students who have graduated, so you're transitioning out. So that's great. Thank you for sharing, sharing that. Okay, so we're going to start by discussing the beginning of your mentoring relationship. This is phase 1. So really before we begin, it's important for us to think about each relationship that we're in our mentoring experiences to help you to become successful as a mentor. Mentoring certainly is a rewarding and a positive experience for everyone involved. But as you know, since you guys have all been mentoring for 2 to 5 years, it's certainly not without its challenges. A mentoring relationship is unlike many other relationships in your life. And that's because it is formally created and has a purposefulness that your friendships or family relations do not necessarily have. And because mentoring relationships are unique, you will need to have some perspective and some helpful tips to help you move forward in your match. So that's really the point of this webinar, is really to help us reflect and to gain some perspective should you find yourself falling into some of these common pitfalls that can occur in any of these phases. And unlike many forms of volunteering, whether it be you serve on a committee or you help out with a special event, mentoring, the impact, where those impacts can be seen quickly, the impact of mentoring is not seen immediately. I mean, how many times have you as a mentor thought, am I making a difference? I hear that time and time again. I'm having a great time, but I'm not sure I'm making a difference. I'm not sure I'm having any impact. But what research has showed us is that mentoring, the most successful mentoring relationships are those that happen in the long term. And because mentoring relationships do take a long time to gain momentum, it is important for mentors to have patience and the ability to work through difficult stretches. Matches that last longer have a greater chance of achieving the outcomes that we're seeking for the students. And while those that cannot get past some of those initial bumps in the road can actually have the potential to do more harm to the youth. And that is certainly not something that anybody wants to see happen. So as each mentoring relationship begins and evolves and changes, understanding these primary stages can help you become successful. So let's begin with stage 1, the beginning. So this is where you're going to meet your student. It's pretty obvious what the beginning is. And what does the beginning feel like? For many mentors and for the students, it may feel awkward. The beginning of any relationship can be awkward, and certainly your mentoring relationship is no different. Your first few months, you will probably focus on getting to know one another. You may explore your similar interests. You may start discussing some expectations of each other or of the relationship, and you'll start to form routines, some norms for your relationship. So this is a time that can be nerve-wracking. I know not only for mentors, will he or she like me? Will my student like me? There's a sense of anticipation, but also nervousness as well. And I think as mentors, it's also important for us to remember that your student is probably feeling the same way too. They're feeling a little maybe excited, maybe not quite sure for younger kids, what does all this mean? And will my new friend like me? So these are some feelings or some situations that may come up during that beginning phase. So what are some common pitfalls that can happen in this phase that can become barriers in your relationship? The first big common pitfall that can happen for mentors are if mentors early on make all the decisions rather than sharing that job with their mentee. And this particularly can be difficult for some mentors who maybe are coming from power positions of some power or authority in their workplace, or if a mentor is coming to this experience from an authoritative point of view, I'm the adult, I'm the authority. You just may be used to calling the shots. But just remember, if you start making all the decisions about the activities you're going to be engaging in or what the goals are going to be for you and your mentee is more likely to close up and over time will become reluctant in sharing his or her thoughts. So I think good advice at this stage is approach your mentoring relationship as you would a friendship. And just like any good friendship, it is a partnership. And although as the adult it may feel awkward or difficult to share the decision-making with the child, in the long run it's more likely that you will build a strong relationship down the road. So how can you make this happen? Maybe spend some of your time in the first few meetings just brainstorming and thinking up a few activities to do in the future. That certainly can break the ice. And by hearing what the student is saying, the message you're giving to that student is that you value his or her opinions. So another simple activity, for lack of a better word, for mentors to engage with their mentees in the beginning of their relationship, the first meeting or the first few meetings, is have your student give you a tour of the school. So why is this great? Well, this is great because, one, it's alleviating some of that awkwardness where you might barrage the student with 20 questions and they may give you one-word answers, or where you may feel that the student is quiet, so you just may naturally want to take control of the activities. If you have the student give you a tour, it's very non-threatening. Kids love telling adults something that they don't know, that the adults don't know. They love knowing more than the adults. And you can be quite attuned to your student by picking up their cues on what they get excited about in school and maybe what they don't like so much. And this certainly can help become conversation starters down the road. Another common pitfall that can happen in the beginning are missed meetings. Now, with that said, I fully recognize that many missed meetings are certainly not the fault of the mentors. We all know that the schools are demanding more and more in terms of curriculum, and there's a lot less available free time for students to meet with their mentors. We're finding disruptions in schedules through professional development days or vacation days, and as experienced by the past few school years with Mother Nature, that weather certainly plays into the consistency of whether mentors can meet on a regular basis during certain periods of the school year. So, understanding that those are circumstances outside of your control as a mentor, meetings that are within your control, every effort should be made to keep to the meeting schedule. Every missed meeting means that it's less time that you have to build the relationship and build the friendship. And many young people still do not have a strong developed sense of organization. So you may as a mentor, need to help them learn how to keep track of your meetings. And I know that this can be a source of frustration for mentors, particularly as students move up from elementary to middle school, and then when they make the transition again from middle school to high school. And all too often, mentors can sometimes take it personally or misinterpret what missed meetings mean, missed meetings by their students. So as a mentor, particularly of mentors of youth in that age group, rather than kind of getting frustrated or angry about missed meetings, perhaps look at it as an opportunity to help teach and guide your student in developing their organizational skills. When you're mentoring at the elementary level, it's a smaller environment. You probably have access to the school liaison, if not a teacher. Your student will likely have one, maybe two teachers the most. As they transition into middle school, it's a much bigger environment. Our middle schools now have roughly 1,100 students in them. Your mentee will be going from an environment of one teacher to 6 or more teachers. They'll be changing classrooms. Their specials will be on alternate scheduled days. There's a lot for them to keep track of. So this is where a mentor can be very helpful in helping them develop those skills. In terms of missed meetings, if you are unable to meet with your mentee and you know it ahead of time, such as business travel, vacation plans, you know you're going to be engaged in a project at work in the next week or so, please let the student know and also let the school liaison know. And if it's possible, and if it's a situation that comes up last minute, a flat tire, your child's sick, you got called into a meeting at work unexpectedly, again, it's important to communicate that through your school liaison and to the student. And it's important that this does get communicated because many of the kids who come into a mentoring program have a history of rocky relationships with adults. So it's really important that they do not get stood up by their mentor on the mentoring day. Another common pitfall that can happen during this beginning phase is misinterpreting your mentee's responses and or behaviors. So this is an issue that mentors report often early on. When we do our 4- and 8-week follow-ups for new matches, sometimes we hear this. I don't think my mentee likes me. They don't open up. They're not talking. This can be really frustrating for mentors because they may see their mentee's reserve as a sign of either boredom or ambivalence or even that their student doesn't like them. But the reality is it's much more likely that the mentee is just not yet comfortable with you as the mentor and may be guarded about expressing their thoughts or sharing any information early on in this stage. We have to keep in mind that many of the youth who are coming into a mentoring relationship, although not all, but many, have good reason not to trust every new adult that enters their life. So any attempt that you make to try to push them to open up can actually have an opposite effect of what you're trying to achieve. They may feel threatened or they just haven't yet built that trust. So how can a mentor help to get the conversation going with the mentee? So, one suggestion is to start by finding an activity that you both enjoy doing. Certainly, since we're in a school-based setting, there should be lots of activities for you to be able to engage in, particularly with younger children. DSABC does have a box of board games at every school, including high school, for the mentors and mentees to engage in. But you can do collaborative art projects, maybe go to the school gym, shoot baskets. Like I had mentioned before, have the student give you a tour of the school. With older students, other mentors have reported that they have done things like exchange a set of questions. You know, what's your favorite color, what's your favorite sports team, and the mentor and the mentee each fill that out and then exchange it, and then they talk about that. And usually you will find that there is some common thread that you can pick up on as a mentor. Also, try to frame your questions so that your mentee will have to provide more than a yes or no answer. So this is common sense, but sometimes when we're kind of in that awkward, you know, I don't know what to do stage, we may feel inclined to kind of do the Spanish Inquisition type 20 questions type of conversation. So what's an example of this? You know, for an example, you know, here's a question that would be a yes or no. Do you like doing art? You'll likely get a yes or no response, or maybe a shoulder shrug. Instead, try rephrasing that question to, you know, I'm not so good at artwork, but I like using clay. What kinds of artwork do you like doing? So you're sharing a little bit of something about yourself, and you're asking a very specific question. So this type of question should help elicit an answer that has a little bit more depth to them. And just begin all of your questions with phrases such as what, who, when, where, and why. Again, common sense, but it's, again, something we may not think of right in the moment. And the most important thing with interpreting your mentee's responses and behaviors, particularly in the beginning, is please just try to be patient. And remember that your mentee may not have had opportunities to engage in a friendship with an adult before. You know, they may have limited experience, or they may have never had an adult in their life who actually wanted to sit and talk with them and who really cared about what they had to say. So it may just be a new and uncomfortable situation for the student. So I think it's important just to keep all these things in mind. Again, the perspective. And finally, another common pitfall in this beginning stage is just simply expecting too much too soon. And what do I mean by this? So you can be expecting too much from the relationship. You may be expecting too much of yourself. Or you may be expecting too much for the student. As I address in mentor training, when I first train new mentors, is that you really, as a mentor, should have no expectations of the student, particularly in the beginning. You are not teacher, parent, social worker, principal. You are not looking, or should not be looking, for any particular outcome or for the student to try to do anything to please you. You really are there to be a friend. So, you know, mentors volunteer to work with kids because they have a desire to see positive change in that young person. And so sometimes we can get a little impatient, or sometimes we have our own expectations of what that positive change should be. But the research tells us that positive change is most likely to occur when a youth feels supported by a friend, rather than being pushed to change a behavior. So instead of having high expectations for your ability to change your mentee, take the time to find out who he or she is. Your mentee needs to know that you appreciate him for who he is, not who you think he should be. So just keep things light, and by keeping things light in your interactions, you will show him that you are there to support him unconditionally. And you'll soon to discover that he or she has many strengths, and you'll start to appreciate and enjoy those. So at this point, I am going to open up for comments, questions, or experiences that any of you may have had in this as you had gone through that beginning phase. And you may do so by entering your question, comment, experience in the chat box. I should keep going? Okay. Okay. Is it some? Hold on. Apparently we can't hear, so we're going to just pause the recording for 1 minute, and then we'll come back. Start the broadcast?
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Okay, we've resolved our audio problem. I'm sorry about that. Like I said, we're new to the webinar experience here, and we figured out our technical difficulties. So I apologize that you missed the first part of the presentation. However, since the poll has indicated that most of you have been in relationships for 2 to 5 years, I think that you've all have gone through this beginning phase. So what I'd like to do, though, is open it up for questions, comments, or if you would like to share your experiences or challenges that you may have had or have in this beginning phase. So if you'd like to go ahead and type that in the chat box right now, and then I can address any of those questions or share your experiences with the audience. Okay, well, since we don't have any questions, comments, or experiences that anyone would like to share at this point, I will move on to the next phase. And just before we move on there, I just want to say that this presentation is being recorded and will be archived on our website. Although you were unable to hear the audio on your end for the first part of the presentation, you will be able to see it in its full capacity at that link. So moving on to phase 2 of the life cycle of the mentoring relationship. So this is the building phase. And this likely might be the phase that most of you are in, since you guys had indicated that you've been in a relationship for 2 to 5 years. So you're probably, particularly those who maybe are in year one or two, are in your building phase of your relationship. So now that you've been matched with your mentee for a couple months or a couple years, the relationship is really starting to build momentum, and you're starting to develop trust. The awkwardness of the beginning, the getting to know you phase has passed, and hopefully a real friendship has started to develop. This phase of the relationship involves deepening your friendship, and really experience is the experiences that you are sharing with one another. So what does it feel like? At this stage, you and your mentee are learning more about each other as you both feel comfortable opening up to one another. So your mentee may be opening up and sharing with you their experiences at school or with their home life or amongst their peers. And you too may have a comfort level in sharing some of your life experiences with your mentee as well. So you'll have an increased comfort level in sharing that information and that helps to build the trust. At this point, you will have established routines. I will meet you every Tuesday at 10:20 in the central office, and then from there we will go to lunch and then go to the media center, or whatever your routine is. It should be established and pretty routine at this point. And it's here where you may feel like you're ready to really help your mentee set some goals, and you may start to focus your activities on helping him or her achieve these goals. So in contrast to that beginning stage where it's still kind of getting to know you and building that trust, during this building phase, that trust is beginning and evolving and building. And you may have a more clear sense of what goals you might like to work on with your mentee. So what are some common pitfalls that can happen during this phase? One of the common pitfalls that can happen during this phase is that your student may start to become too dependent upon you. So what would this look like? You may be getting, your mentee may try to find ways to access you outside of school. They may want your email, your cell phone number. They may be putting in requests for additional meeting time. And they may start inviting you to activities outside of school. And that's great. And while it's absolutely great that your mentee has developed this trust in you and is seeking your advice and attention, it's important for you as the mentor to set, if they have not already been set, or reinforce the boundaries that are laid out for this particular program. So I cannot reiterate enough that our program is a school-based mentoring program. We all know what that means. That mentoring takes place on school grounds, school day, school year. That is all that our mentors are covered for under liability, so that really is for your protection as much as that is for the protection of the child. And two, our program is not designed to monitor those relationships outside of the school environment. So this can sometimes become problematic for mentors in that mentors may start questioning whether the boundaries of the program are enough for them, and may start accepting invitations or becoming that person for the mentee to become dependent upon outside of your school relationship. Or some mentors may feel a little conflicted because they want to operate under the boundaries of the program, but may feel a little pressure from the student. I don't want to hurt his or her feelings. Isn't that great that the child wants to see more of me? I feel that the students, my mentees' experiences are limited, and I as the mentor can broaden their life experiences, whatever the case may be. This is a common pitfall in this stage. But it's up to you as the adult and as the mentor to be responsible for operating within the context of this particular program and to set those boundaries with your mentee. So, and you can do so in such a way that is not hurtful, And just use I statements. So for example, I care about you and I'm happy that you feel comfortable, that you want to see me more when we talk, but I am your friend here at school and I will continue to come visit you at school. So just reinforce those boundaries. And give the child a chance to respond. That's totally appropriate. And just listen to hear what they have to say. Another common pitfall in this stage, and I've actually addressed this a couple of times this school year, is that once your mentee is comfortable and starts opening up to you, you may hear a lot about problems and issues that he or she faces in their life. And it is not uncommon for mentors to feel overwhelmed by the problems or the circumstances that their mentee is facing. And it's human nature, I think, because you are vested in this relationship with this child, that you feel it's your responsibility to fix it, that you need to fix whatever is happening in their life, that you need to be the counselor or the social worker in order to really make a difference. So this is, again, an important time to remember boundaries and to remember that you are not the counselor or the social worker, and that the beauty of having a mentoring relationship within the context of a school environment is that you do have professionals on staff who are in those roles and who are trained and equipped and actually probably have a bigger, fuller picture of the student's circumstances than you are getting 1 hour a week with that student. So just take that burden off of yourself. You, again, are their friend. You're not their savior. You don't need to fix it for them. And as a friend and a champion of your mentee, you can do a lot to help make your mentee feel better about him or herself and their situation. But the reality of the situation is many of the kids are in the program because they come from tough situations at home, and the school can really help the students get plugged in to services that they or their families may need. That is not your hill to die on, so to speak. And if you are finding that your mentee is unloading a lot of their problems on you on a regular basis, and that you may need a little guidance, please absolutely go seek out support from the school liaison and or the school social worker if the liaison is not the school social worker, just to help you get some guidance on how you could interact with the student to make that interaction positive without you feeling that you have to fix it for them. And understand that when you go to the social worker, it's probably best for you to go with that approach. Can you help guide me in conversations with the student as they share their circumstances with me? We have to recognize, too, again, this is a good time for me to bring up confidentiality. So sometimes mentors who are in this situation where they're feeling overwhelmed by problems or the circumstances that their child's facing will go to the school social liaison for support, and sometimes want more information than the school can legally provide. And sometimes mentors will fall into a trap of feeling that they're not being supported by the school's not telling them enough, or I have heard this on several occasions, the school's not doing anything. And that simply is just not the case. The case is that you as the mentor just don't know what the school is doing, and nor can they, by law, tell you what is happening because of FERPA laws. And we've gone over this in new mentor training, but I always think it's a good idea to remind mentors that just like we have HIPAA laws when we kind of sign our life away at the doctor's office, similar laws exist for students in school environments. So it's Federal Education Right to Privacy Act. And so sometimes this can be a pitfall and a frustration for mentors. So if you feel that you're in that situation, just kind of rein it in a little bit. Remember, what can I do within the context of my 1 hour a week to help support this child, knowing that you really have absolutely no control on what goes on outside of your meeting time together. Another common pitfall in this building phase is that mentors may start to feel underappreciated. You may feel underappreciated by your student. You may feel underappreciated by the school staff. So I will address both of those. So let me address by your student first. So sometimes mentors feel that they are giving up a lot of their time and energy, which you are, and that you are seemingly never thanked for your efforts by the student. So the harsh reality is, don't expect to be thanked for your dedication by your mentee. Most of the mentees simply don't have the maturity yet to thank their mentors, nor do they quite understand or realize until many years later the impact that you as their mentor has had on them. And I think that this is always clearly evidenced at our annual breakfast when we give out the scholarship. I'm assuming most of our attendees have been at that breakfast. I know some of our attendees have had students who have graduated, and they've kind of gone through all these phases. And it wasn't until 5 years, 6 years, 12 years into the relationship, when the kids are now 18 years old, young adults, ready to head out into the world, when they're in that reflective mode and have gained maturity, that they, or have even been asked, frankly, to reflect on their mentoring experience, that they really appreciate that impact. So I'm sort of the mindset, just bless and release that. You kind of just have to go on blind faith that you are making a difference. And you may know someday, and for some mentors, you may never know. And also, don't misinterpret it. Sometimes it's simply a shyness issue, or students aren't accustomed to talking about their feelings. So they may speak very highly of you to their teachers or their peers or the social worker, but they may feel embarrassed to express their feelings directly to you. And I have heard that, and you have to also understand you are only seeing that student once a week, and you're seeing them behave within the context of your relationship, where the school staff is seeing them all week long, and they're seeing them in a variety of contexts, as students, as amongst their peers, and then how they interact with you. So I hear that from a lot of social workers. Oh, Johnny's face just lights up when they see their mentor. Or I just recently had feedback from a school liaison who had shared that one of the mentees was never absent on Fridays, the day their mentor came. Those are things that you would really not necessarily know about, but those are ways that we know that the kids appreciate seeing you. So the best advice here is just continue to model courteous behavior yourself when you are with your student, and maybe think about telling them how much you appreciate the time that you're sharing with them, how much you appreciate him or her. And feeling underappreciated by the school. I know that I hear from mentors who, particularly who are, again, in this building phase and have been with the student for a while, that they don't get feedback from the school. I encourage mentors to go check in from time to time with your school liaisons to see how they are perceiving the match going. But in this building stage, you really are at a point where you may know the student better than the school staff may know them. So it's perfectly appropriate for you to reach out to the school and to try to get a little bit of feedback or guidance. And also sometimes if the liaisons hear nothing, they just assume everything's going well. So, no news is good news type of thing. So it's certainly fine for you to go, and I encourage mentors from time to time to check in with the liaison, or if the elementary level with the classroom teacher, whoever you have that relationship with. This doesn't happen so much in school-based programs, but it can happen from time to time, so I will address it briefly. During this building phase, sometimes you may have a boundary issue with parents. Now, for the most part, our mentors are not meeting the students' parents or have opportunity to engage with the parents. But sometimes, parents can get involved, and they may start asking either for favors or money, or if it's not directly to you, they may set up the child to seek you out for some kind of resource, or can you take my kid to the library, or whatever the case may be. It may be hard for some mentors to refuse such requests, particularly if you're feeling, overwhelmed by the family situation. But it is important that you maintain clear boundaries with the parents, just as you would with the students, and that everything within the realm of our mentoring program does need to stay within the school environment. So as we close my overview of Phase 2, the building, I would like to open it up again for any questions, concerns, comments, or if anyone would like to share any experiences, if anything I've said resonated with anything that you may have experienced or are currently experiencing. If you'd like to share, please type your question in the chat box. Okay. Since I don't have any questions, I'm going to move on to Phase 3, the testing phase. So once your mentoring relationship is off the ground, you've set some goals, you guys are humming along, it's great. It's not out of the realm of normal behavior for your mentee to start testing boundaries of your relationship. And although you've spent time affirming that you appreciate and enjoy your mentee, he or she may still want to see how far your commitment really goes, especially kids who have had adults who consistently let them down, or have had a lot of adults in and out of their lives over the years. And because some of the students may come from situations where adults can't always be relied upon, trusting another adult can be difficult for some kids. So they may act out to try to sabotage the relationship by testing you. What this feels like, bottom line, this is just plain old confusing for a lot of mentors. And why wouldn't it be? This can be a confusing time, especially if the testing is occurring after a period where you've built up trust and rapport. When your quote-unquote perfect mentee starts missing appointments, shows resentment towards you, tries to get away with things that they wouldn't normally have done that before, or act hostile or sullen, it's easy to take the behavior personally. And you may feel that your mentee is avoiding you or just simply doesn't like you anymore. So what are some common pitfalls that happen here? Of course, you're going to feel less interested in continuing in the relationship, and I don't think anybody would blame you. Your mentee is making you not feel like you're a good mentor. I also hear from some mentors, okay, one second, someone had a question and it just didn't appear where it should have. I'm going to continue on, Barbara, and then we'll address your question at the end when I have better access to it. So you may feel less interested in continuing in that relationship because you're just not feeling competent in the relationship as a mentor, or you may begin to doubt your own ability to make a difference in the student's life. And this is a time that most matches fail, or some matches fail. So it's really important to recognize the testing behavior simply for what it is. It likely is a signal that your mentee wants you to prove that you are committed to the relationship. This doesn't mean that you should take any disrespect. That's certainly not what I'm suggesting. But what I am suggesting is trying to not take it personally. Take the shift of the mentee behavior personally. Take it off of you personally, and let's explore a little bit. And you don't need to do this on your own. I certainly would encourage you to come to me, and we can talk it through. I have done that many, 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 many occasions with mentors who are finding themselves in this situation. And also work it through with the school social worker or the school liaison if possible. So what are some real-life examples of this? We find that some of this testing phase can, again, I'm going to pick on middle schoolers, but it can happen in middle school. So it is very confusing and sometimes disheartening for mentors who have had such a lovely relationship with their mentees at the elementary level, that as the students transition into middle school, and then to some extent up to high school, but kind of once we get the mentors through that freshman year, those relationships are back on even keel and have evolved to a new level in terms of goal setting and have much more focused purposefulness to them. But what we find, sometimes it's also not so always that the kid is testing you, although that's primarily what it is. It could also be where they are developmentally. So, for example, for a middle schoolers may start missing meetings. Again, going back to where we were in that beginning stage with the missed meetings. Sometimes it really is just innocent, just managing time. But if they were good about it and then all of a sudden they're starting to miss meetings, it could be things like, well, they want to see their mentor, but they're afraid of what their friends are going to think about them if they have a mentor. They're going to think that there's something wrong with them. It could be that since we have limited time available to, for when we have a mentor, to mentor, that there's a conflict between the lunch period and mentoring. And at that age level, everything's about the social. So although they want to see you, they also want to be with their friends at lunch. So remember to just try to recognize that the behavior is not about you, that they're either testing you or just kind of going through a wonky phase. And try not to throw in the towel without exploring or scratching the itch a little bit more. What we have found is most of the time when the kids say to us, I don't need my mentor anymore, or I don't want to be my mentor, I don't want my mentor anymore, what they really mean is, is my mentor really committed to me? Or I want to see my mentor, but I also want to hang out with my friends. So having some flexibility here goes a long way. What we have found is a strategy that we have used and implemented on many occasions when this situation has come up is that we work out a flexible schedule with the mentoring. So in other words, it doesn't need to be a rigid every week, once a week for 1 hour. It can be every other week. Sometimes as the kids get into high school, it's as few as once a month. But what we find is that the next school year, or after we've done this for a few months, that the relationship starts off again or resumes again the next school year, stronger than it ever was. Because one, you respected the student, you showed them that you heard them, and you respected them as a friend. And two, that you stuck with your commitment to continue mentoring them and continuing in the relationship, and that you were not another adult who let them down. So that's pretty much what happens in that testing phase. And if we can kind of get through that confusing and frustrating time, we often will find that the relationships do come through stronger in the end. So again, I'm going to open it up to questions. I'd ask that rather than type in the question box, that you please type in the chat box, because that is something that I can see more readily. And Barbara, we'll address your question from the previous portion now. Okay, so one of our participants had shared this. I was told my mentee was too social. She's in junior high school, middle school, and is there any advice on how to get a goal, to set a goal on that? Has anyone had a similar question? So has anyone had that situation, that the reason why the mentee was I'm assuming that the reason why the mentee was referred for a mentor is that she's too social, and how can you set how as a mentor can you set a goal around that? So one of our participants, Barbara, is seeking from some guidance, or if anyone has had that experience. Nobody has shared that experience, Barbara, but what I would say is I don't know if you can set a goal about that. I think it's more just having conversations about acceptable social behavior, helping her develop social skills, and when it's appropriate to goof around with your friends and when it's not, and maybe give some examples. And rather than it be a goal, because I'm not sure how you as a mentor would measure that as a goal, I think it's just more of a thread of a conversation throughout your sessions. Okay, you're welcome. Are there any comments about the phase 3, the testing period? Okay, I'm going to move on because we are going over our time here. Again, that transition piece we're not going to discuss here. It is about closure. The only thing I will say about the closure is that if for whatever reason you cannot continue in your mentoring relationship, whether it just be that you are just simply frustrated with this particular match, if you think it's just not a good match, or if just life circumstances are such that you're unable to continue mentoring, it is just critical, critical, critical. I cannot reiterate it enough to put some closure to that relationship. Please do not just stop showing up, because that can do more damage to the student than any progress you may have made along the way. So that's really all I'm going to say about that. Again, we can address it more in depth when we do this workshop live in a more interactive mode, in a live workshop. So here's just some thoughts to take away as you reflect upon this past school year, gearing yourself up for the fall. Hopefully you'll all continue with your students. Just some things to remember and reflect upon as you move forward in your mentoring relationships. A mentor is a responsible and caring friend. A mentor is not a counselor or social worker. A mentor is a role model. A mentor is not a parent or guardian. A mentor is a patient listener. A mentor is not a disciplinarian. A mentor is an advocate. A mentor is not a party planner or gift giver. A mentor is a nurturer of possibilities. A mentor is not a savior. And I want to reflect really on a mentor is a nurturer of possibilities. Again, for all of those who attended our breakfast, whether it was this year or in previous years, sometimes we tend to think of the kids that we mentor as kids at risk. But I really think that they are kids on the verge of great possibilities. And that's what you provide to them as a mentor. You help them nurture what's possible down the road. So I want to thank you all for attending. Again, I apologize for the audio glitch, but again, this has been recorded and will be archived. I am hoping to do the similar topic in a live workshop in the fall, probably in October, and we'll get information out on that. And here are just some quick tips for helping you if you need them. We ask you to continue to attend and participate in our DSABC workshops and webinars. Now that we have this webinar capability, we hope to be able to provide ongoing and more rigorous training opportunities for mentors. Reach out for ideas, suggestions, and support from other mentors, especially if you're in a work environment where you have large groups of mentors. Some companies have quasi-formal meetings, and others, I just encourage you to seek out who your colleagues and coworkers might be who are mentors and kind of pick their brains, or organize some monthly huddles yourself. For our independent mentors, feel free to reach out to me. I am considering doing some kind of forum for independent mentors to have, maybe a monthly or quarterly opportunity to huddle together and learn from one another and share your experiences. Actively participate in our follow-ups. So when we engage mentors, whether you're a new mentor or an existing mentor in a new match, either Ellen or myself from the DSABC office follow up with you at 4 weeks and 8 weeks. Sometimes we don't always get responses back, so it's important that mentors actively participate in those checkups so we can help guide you and also help facilitate any little bumps in the road. Always seek the advice and guidance and support from your school liaison, and I'm always available to help support and guide you as well. And try to educate yourself about the issues that face your mentee. This way you may not feel so overwhelmed. Knowledge is always power. When in doubt, always ask for help, and here's our contact information, which all of you have. So again, thank you so much for participating today, and thank you so much for your commitment to mentoring this past school year. I wish you all a wonderful and relaxing summer, and I look forward to reconnecting with you all in August. Thank you.